Hey, how you doing, Freight Coach? For everybody out there that might be listening or watching, this is Patrick Escolas with the Banyan Technology Podcast, Tire Tracks. I am delighted to have Chris Jolly, the Freight Coach. There's a hashtag in there somewhere.
There it is.
Chris, how you doing?
Dude, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for coming on and or inviting me on to come and chat today. I'm really looking forward to it.
Hey, I am too. I watch your stuff as much as I can, especially since now I'm deep in the logistics industry. Yeah. I did not come from it, and I needed some sources of what's going on, what am I getting myself into, and the orange shirt definitely was the way.
Oh, dude, it's funny because I when I went into business for myself, at that time, I'm like, all right, how do I stand out in a crowd? You've been to conferences before. I've been to conferences. Everybody's dressed the same, right? It's that light blue undershirt with the blue.
Yeah, like I work at Best Buy. I've got it right here. Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Everywhere. And I was like, if I'm going to go into business for myself, I got to stand out in a crowd. I'm like, I already wear polos because like I'm from a small town. So like, dude, I'm dressed up in a polo. Like that's my mentality, right?
Well, plus there's no ironing needed. You don't know if you've worn it once or 3 times. It's ready to go.
Yeah. So I bought 6 orange polos and I'm
separately, or did you get a nice little bulk like Walmart pack?
No, dude, I Under Armour.
Okay.
I passed it up. So I got 3 at first. And then my wife's like, I'm sick of washing these during the week. She's like, you need to buy more. And I'm like, all right. So, splurged, bought 3 more. And, so yeah, I do actually change throughout the week. And I just went orange because I'm just like, okay, I got to stand out in a crowd. How am I going to get anybody to remember me, especially building a brand, building a company up? That's like the biggest thing is it's like, how do I get noticed? Well, blaze orange polo, rock a backwards hat, and be willing to make a fool of yourself on camera.
Well, I have the make a fool of myself on camera thing down. I was going to say the orange, we know you didn't pick it because you're a Browns fan, as we talked about before absolutely. This. You root for the Twins, and my Guardians, we get to play each other quite a bit. But we'll put those aside just for a little. We'll have plenty of time to bash each other throughout the season, I'm sure. I'll pretend like I'm a professional at this. So wanted to start, since I've got you on here. Nobody wants to hear about me. Where you talked about starting the business on your own, making it stand out. Where do you come from? Like, I mean, I'm sure I could wiki you in some bullet points, but give me your elevator pitch. What's the Chris Jolly rags to riches story right here?
Well, still in the rags phase. Riches
are orange rags though.
Orange rags, yeah. Riches are coming. But it's man, I come from the industry, so I come from a family of truck drivers. When my great grandparents immigrated here from Germany back in the late 20s, early 30s. They started a trucking company. And then that turned into my dad driving. He was an owner-op. He owned his own trucking company for about 40 years. And I got into the industry. I always wanted to drive growing up, like ever since I was a little kid. Like even still to this day, the smell of diesel fuel and a Jake brake are about the most nostalgic things ever for me, because every time I hear a Jake brake, because like we lived on a little hill. So like when my dad would come home from the road, he'd smash his Jake brake to slow down his truck. So I always think like dad's home. It's really weird how that happens even to this day. And the
rest of us on the road are like, oh God, what's happening?
Yeah. What is that voice?
Ooh, daddy.
Yeah. And yeah, so I got into, I wanted to drive, and my dad, I think as most parents don't want their kids to like follow in their footsteps, because my dad knew the reality of the industry, and he wanted more for me. And his big line was, I want you to work with your brain and not your back. That doesn't say that I didn't pick up a shovel at 5 years old, because I did.
Children are great cheap labor, if 100%. Any parent will tell you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've definitely done my fair share of manual labor throughout my life. And I got into the industry just in sales, and I wanted to just do anything and everything. And I at the end of the day, I was like, well, I want to work in sales. I'm like, I don't want to wear a suit. I hate suits, even to this day. My wife hates it that I hate suits, but she's accepted the fact that very rarely will I put one on.
You give her 2-3 days a year, right?
Yeah, absolutely, at max. And so, yeah, I just like, you know what? I want to go out, I want to do something, but I want to be involved in a blue collar industry, because like those are my people, like I'm from a town of 1,800 in northern Wisconsin. Like I only know blue collar people. That's my entire family. Those are my people. So I was like, all right, I'm going to get into the industry this way. So I was a broker. Like I started off loading trucks in college because like they worked second shift and they paid a lot of money, $12 an hour. So to a 19, 20-year-old, that's a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
And yeah. So
UPS came to my campus and tried to,
yeah.
Our schedule was almost around the UPS season was like, hey, you want to have a big break when we need you to hire all of your students? All right. And you can afford drinking in winter if you do this. Yeah.
Dude, absolutely. So I did that. And then I graduated from college and I got a job at a freight brokerage. So I packed up my truck. I was living in northern Wisconsin. I packed up my truck and I headed out to Reno, Nevada. My older brother lived out there. And I went out to visit one summer in college and I was like, this is not the cornfields of northern Wisconsin. I got to come here. Great time to get away though and experience life outside of the bubble. And I think that most people, even if you come back to your hometown, get out and explore a little bit because you might find yourself along that journey. And, so, I just got in and I was a broker for a long time. And then right at the beginning of the pandemic, I actually resigned from my job. Okay. I resigned because like, I wanted to go try something new. I felt like I had accomplished everything I could as a broker. And I was like, all right, I want to go work for a trucking company. I want to sell over there. I want to learn assets. And then I'll take my 15 to 17 years experience at that time and I'll make a C-suite play one day.
Was that crazy? Because as we're looking back now, isn't that like the height of broker gains for a minute there during that COVID stretch? Like, were there times when you're like, what did I do? Or was it you were pretty solid with your decision the whole time?
Oh no, I was terrified. Because I resigned before like COVID was there, but it wasn't shut down.
Right.
I resigned on a Monday and by Thursday, that's when things hit the fan and then everything shut down that Friday. In unison, everybody who wanted to interview me, hey, we got to shelf this till July.
Yeah, no one's hiring anything.
Yeah. I had just moved to Arizona with my wife and my son 3 months prior. So I'm out of a job, beginning of a pandemic. And I'm like, what am I going to do here? Like, I don't know how this is going to go. Fortunately, I had a little bit of money saved up, like not, hey, I'm good for 4 years, but
you're like I got 6 months. Yeah.
That's literally what it was, man. It's like, I'm like, I got 6 months and I will take everything I've saved down to zero if I have to.
Right.
But that's when I got involved on social media. And I was like seeing a bunch of posts out there and I'm like, okay, this can't be real. I'm like, either I was absolutely terrible at my job or it's as easy as call a shipper. They give you $1 million, you find a trucking company and you're a millionaire overnight. And I'm like, this isn't right. And so I took it from there. And then I'm like, why is nobody talking about the realities of the industry? Why is it this cookie cutter? Just do this and everything will be all right. I'm like, what happens if you have a damaged product? Or what do you do if a driver takes out a fence at a shipper? Or what do you do if there's a driver that gets shut down over the winter due to a road closure? Nobody's talking about that. So that's where I started angling my content. Is I'm like, all right, I wasn't that good at this job clearly. So I'm going to start talking about my experience. Turns out a lot of people aligned with what I was saying. Because you know what? The struggles in sales are real. Cold calling is not easy. Cold prospecting is not easy. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go out there and talk about this.
No, and that's amen to that, because that's what I look into. I come from the sales background before logistics, and one thing that I can tell you is that if you look at it, everybody with a podcast and everybody on LinkedIn is the most successful, easiest ride to success they've ever had, and they got $48 million coming in, and they started just 2 years ago, and you're like, wow, I've been calling 70 people a day and I'm still rent still sucks. But no. And that's what it was funny. I think I just answered a poll on something the other day. It was like, hey, would you watch a sales podcast on this? And be like, no, I want to see the losses and the shit show that happens in between those crazy wins that somebody gets, because that's where the real lessons are, or that's where the real knowledge, like, I think you were saying, I watched one of them where you're talking about how the price has gone up from, I think, Tampa to Atlanta. And then you brought up the fact that, hey, but it's going to be cheaper going the other way. And that's one of those things that, those little things that, who's talking in granular detail specifically about, hey, here's a way that you can gain something from here. And I think you do a great job with how you're talking and who you're talking to, because you're not saying, hey, look at me, I'm so good at this. You're like, no, here's the reality of it. Here's the day in and day out. Here's what happens when shipments go bad. So
it, to me though, dude, it's because like that's just what's missing in social media as a whole. Like
the reality.
Real life. And that's what, like, cause that's why I started posting about stuff all the time. And but that's also at the same time why I don't talk about the controversial, this and that, carriers against brokers against shippers. I don't, because people are so focused on vanity metrics, but I'm like, listen, I know I'm not the only one out there struggling in sales. I know I'm not the only one out there who didn't know how to read a freight market at one point in time. So I want to put information out there that people can actually apply to their business, because there's so much opportunity that's out there. There's so much opportunity. But again, so many people are like, they try and be so polarizing. It's either they're the best, or it's the Debbie Downer effect where they're just posting like, want. I think of like Eeyore, you know, like, oh, it's the worst day of the way. It's not. You know,
that could mean I could be Eeyore or the guy riding the sunshine, depending on what time of the day you catch me, and somewhere in between, that's the average. But I mean, you're so right with it. It's the middle. Like, what happened to being in the middle and being just not average, but finding the happy medium, being the enemy somehow. You don't have to be at either side of it.
No. Yeah, dude. Because it's like I guess there's also me just talking about what I'm going through, because I bootstrap everything. I'm self-funded. I don't have investors. I don't have a golden parachute, like everything.
Right, so you don't have an agenda that you're trying to push while you're doing it.
No, not at all. I'm talking about what I go through out there, because you know, at the end of the day, not everybody has investor capital. Not everybody has, you know, venture capitalists willing to throw millions and millions of dollars at them. But that doesn't mean that you need that to succeed.
Right.
You know, and I am just out here legitimately putting out what I'm going through every single day on every phase of everything, because I started in my bedroom. And this is why I leave all of my early content up there. I want people to see where it started.
Right.
Because that's like one of the things, like a DM that I've been getting a lot. Like, fortunately, I have advertisers, and you know, for my content and everything. But like, I get DMs from people, and they're like, hey, I want to start a podcast. How do I get advertising? And it's like, man, it's not that easy. You know, like go back to day one and look at how for a year straight, I put out podcasts, videos, content every single day before I got my first advertiser. And even then, thankfully, they were like, we love what you're doing. We see the future value of what you're doing. And they got on board with that. You know, so it's like Trucker Tools was my first advertiser. Emerge came on shortly after that. And I am forever grateful for those, because they kept me going. If it wasn't for those people, if it wasn't for Prasad and Andrew Leto believing in what I was on for my mission, I don't know if I'd be here today.
You'd be like, I got something else to do. This isn't going to bring the bills in, pay the bills. Yeah,
exactly. Because dude, I broke even every single, I broke even. I lost money for the first 6 months. I broke even from months 7 to 13 or 14.
Okay.
And then I made a little bit of money after that fact. Like up until last year in 2022, that was the first year I actually made a little bit of money. And I still haven't like actually taken money from this. Like,
right.
Yes,
You're like, I'm still not paying me. I'm still the most underpaid employee at the Freight Coach.
Yeah. But that's just what happens out there though. And it's like, if you want to achieve these things, you know, it's a lot harder than you think, but it is so much more rewarding at the exact same time. And it's the same thing in sales too, man. And like when you're building your book of business, it takes so much longer than you want it to. And that is why you have to value every single customer that pays you, because now, man, that's how I feed my family. Like, that's how I put a roof over my kid's head. I don't take any relationship for granted. I can't just find another advertiser or find another shipper to work with. That's food on my son's plate right there.
Yeah, so much of it is that true relationship too. Like, you have who you are, and as those people supported you, it wasn't and I assume they weren't coming in and saying, "Hey man, we need you to turn your podcast into a full Trucker Tools that needs to be everything you talk to." They're liking what you're doing, and so they're trying to grow with you.
Fortunately, that's exactly what it was. And I've always had the stance of this, where it's like, I'm going to speak my mind on things. Like, I don't play the extreme game on either side. I'm just going to put my honest opinion out there on stuff. And I believe in the First Amendment. If you listen to my stuff, you clearly understand that I do. But like my whole thing is it's like, I just want to put an unfiltered opinion out there that somebody can't look at it and say, that's coming from somewhere else.
Right. It's just Chris Jolly.
Yeah. And again, I've taken that stance, and fortunately, I think that when people don't put out that facade, that hey, I'm perfect at everything, when you actually go with who you are as a person without fear of repercussion, like, yeah, I get it. I swear a lot. Okay. I'm very aware of that. I don't need anybody to tell me. But this is who I am.
Nobody doubts that. No, like there's no thought that, man, there's a team of 5 guys writing up what he's saying day in and day out and putting on this persona. Absolutely. No, that the real comes through.
Yeah. And, because again, like, I just think, like, that's what you just need to unapologetically be yourself, and it's always so simple to say it in this setting, right? Like, when it's just me and you, it's so easy to say that.
Nothing's on the line. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. But I promise you, if you live that life every single day, it is so liberating, man. Like, I just like everybody, I'm a human being. I struggled with confidence. I struggled with everything for a long time until I stopped caring. Like, I care very much about other people. I truly do. But what somebody else's opinion is not going to deter me anymore. And it used to so much.
You can only control what you can control. And usually that's just you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I appreciate all of that. How does all of this on your podcast, how does that translate to your brokerage? Like, does that go hand in hand with that? Or is there a time where you've got to kind of turn your brain one way to social and one way to brokerage? Or give me an idea of, has it helped you grow it? I mean, in my thought, that's an easy, softball, of course. But at the same time, what are some of the other obstacles with being both things?
I think that you're going to attract your tribe no matter what. Like, the only obstacle that there is at times is like, if I get an email when I'm live or something like that, and I'm like itching to like want to look at it.
You're like, podcast, please hold on. I need to make money over here. 1 second.
But that's the thing, man, is like, when I'm an independent, I can do that. And my audience would love that.
They'll understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on. I've got an email. We're going to book a live load right now. Yeah, exactly.
Dude, that's exactly it. But that's also one of the main driving forces why I stopped consulting and got back into it, because like, I was going back and forth for a long time, man. I'm like, how do I bring more validity to what I'm saying? Because I wasn't second guessing myself, but I'm like, I don't want anybody to ever listen to my stuff and be like, yeah, clearly you know what you're talking about, but you're a consultant. Like, you don't really get it.
You don't want to talk too much in the hypotheticals. You want it to be grounded in a very real examples of what someone could do today if they picked up the phone 20 seconds from now.
Absolutely. So I legitimately put my money where my mouth was, and I started Freight Coach Logistics, and I'm going for it. And everything I talk about is literally what I'm doing inside of my business. So when I hit 25 million in revenue, you guys are going to witness it. You guys are going to hear everything that I'm doing the entire time. When I go from 25 to 100, same situation. When I go from 100 to a billion in the first 10 years, same situation, you guys. Everything that I am delivering is what I'm applying. But that's the hard part of it all, man, is the application of it. Yep. You know, because I interview shippers all the time on my stuff. Like, fortunately, these shippers, I have a secret shipper audience that runs deep. I can't say who they are, but
or else everybody would be calling them to be like, hey, here you're working with the freight coach. We can do better than that.
Yeah, but no, it's not even that. It's just they love my content because they'll ask me questions. They're like, hey, I saw your video. I had this happen. What did this actually mean? So I'm like, all right, here you go. But I've been able to interview actual large shippers on my stuff. I am very fortunate to have friends that are on that side of the fence that are willing to come on, and they lay out literally everything you need to do. Like just this past week, I had 2 enterprise shippers on my podcast. If you apply everything that they say, it's going to take time. You will build a 7-figure business based off of the information that they gave you in those 2 episodes that are about a total of an hour and a half of your time.
Damn.
Like, no joke, man. Like, these guys laid out how to prospect better, how to grow with an enterprise level account better, how to position yourself to break in with a shipper with 75 nationwide facilities. They laid it all out there. And you just have to apply with what they say.
That's crazy. And that's awesome that you offer that as a kind of a value add to not only anybody listening, but at the same time, you're hearing that. So as you're talking to your shippers, you're like saying, hey, shipper, big shipper A here did this. Is that something you're going to be going down in the future? Kind of, though you're, like you said, you're not consulting, you kind of are from a very vague and general perspective through the podcast.
In a sense, it's, to me, it's putting that information, again, it's putting that information out there for people that need it, that, actually have everything on the line, just like I do, because I view, whether it's an entrepreneur who goes out and starts their own trucking company or their own brokerage, if you have everything on the line to try and live your American dream, like the right information, because I'm not trying to sell a course, right? Like, I'm not trying to sell a course to anybody at all.
You're not coming to the Holiday Inn and talking here?
Absolutely not. And I refuse. I've been approached numerous times. Like, hey, you should create a course. I said, absolutely not. I'm going to continue to give away everything for free.
There's a few hypnotists I know that you guys could team up. You could lose weight, quit smoking, and increase your freight efficiency at the same time,
100%. And because, dude, for me, it's like nothing I'm doing is proprietary, right? Like, at the end of the day, nothing's proprietary.
This is the Freight Coach secret. Dial in now. 2 easy payments of $19.99, and we'll give you the real gems.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I'm just putting that information out there. Again, yes, I have advertisers. I hope you guys all go to Trucker Tools and V-Hub and SPI Logistics. You guys do all of that and support them. But I'm going to put this out no matter what. Like, again, back to what I was saying earlier. I did this for free for a long time. It won't happen, but if it did and everything went away tomorrow, I'm going to continue to do this because my mission isn't what can I gain from this? Because if it was, I would only be posting controversial stuff that would drive my metrics through the roof.
And you'd have sold out and you'd have picked up whoever's paying your bill and they're pushing in their agenda early on. Exactly.
I could easily 10x my engagement if I took that route, but I'm not going to. Like, I've already seen the growth. I already have legitimately a ranked podcast on iTunes. I don't need to do anything different than what I'm doing. And I'm going to continue to do that because there are hardworking men and women of this industry that listen to my stuff that actually are able to make decisions that are going to benefit them at no cost to them outside of listening to this voice for about 35 minutes or whatever it costs.
It's a high cost. It's a high cost. But no. But yeah, it's the blue collar are your people, and that's what you're doing it for. No, I respect that, and you see that in the content you put out. So you were talking about like 10xing something, and you talked about those shippers that are that could really show you that way forward if you were listening or watching. What are some of the innovations or some of the technology that they're doing? As you say, we're not pushing something specifically. what are some of the common denominators that you're seeing in these growths for these shippers? What are, from a technological perspective? Hi, I'm from Banyan. We're going to talk about it at some point. But no, just from that. But what does that look like to you? Like, what are three things that are innovative in the logistics or transportation industry right now that are worth looking out for, or are already here and are just going to get bigger?
I personally think so. I've said this. I said this with Alan when Alan was on my podcast. That
he's bald, but he talks a little more than I do. But I love him for it.
That's funny.
If it wasn't for the fact that he'd be talking a little more, you might think we're the same. No, you never. I've got a much better beard than he does. He's my boss. I'm just ripping on him.
I have to say this while I can. Yep.
Yeah.
But no, man, I think like I was talking with him about this. Like, not 95% of my day as a freight broker should be automated, right? Yeah. Like, legitimately, I shouldn't be manually building loads. I shouldn't be manually accepting tenders. Load updates through tracking should be automatically sent over. API integrations, whatever you want to do to automate everything, you should, except for those intangible moments that customers need to hear from you, right? Like, a customer should never call my brokerage or my business and get a busy tone or a no answer or a voicemail, right?
Yeah.
Because they should hear from me first. No matter what, as crappy as the situation might be, they should hear from me first. Just like my carriers, right? If there's a delay, they should hear from me.
Is that something you've always had in place since you were a broker before everything?
No.
Or is that something? Yeah. When did that thought process come along for you?
I learned the hard way, man. I just like with everything, like there's a lot of value in adversity. Mm-hmm. There really is.
The trial and error of life and the wisdom gained by getting through it.
Absolutely, man. Because you'll never know until you lose a customer because of something you failed to do, right? And it's never the situation that upsets them, because especially in trucking, anybody who's been in this industry for a long time, fully aware, even if you're newer, fully aware things happen. But what nobody can ever tolerate is why they never were notified that something happened, right?
It's the expectation of communication.
Yeah, and the same thing. And as brokers, to me, it's like we have to play both sides. Carriers and customers are just as important. They're 1A and 1B to me. And if there's a delay at a shipper for whatever reason, or a receiver, the driver should never have to reach out to me every 30 minutes to find out what's going on. I should be reaching out to them, right? Hey, listen, no update's still an update, right? Mm-hmm. They still hear from you, because again, people need to know that you actually care, right? Like, it doesn't matter if it's a weekend pickup. Like, man, I've had weekend, pickups, 6 a.m., 7 a.m. Driver arrives. The weekend crew was late to load, for whatever reason. Chances are they, closed an establishment down the night before.
Yeah.
But I have to be there to answer their calls and to call them to let them know, like, hey, I'm on it. We're working on it. Just like if there's a delay going into a shipper for whatever reason, hey, listen, we're in contact with the driver. This is where they are, whatever it is, it's going to be okay. That's all they need. They don't need to have them reach out to you to find out, let me look into that quick. Those are like, you're committing just like the biggest egregious act at that moment in their eyes.
No. And that's where, it's funny you bring that up. It's not necessarily knowing if shit's going wrong or if something's gone wrong. It's of letting them know ahead of time that hey, I'm on it, or this is what needs to happen, or there's something going on, I'm looking into it.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to another point I wanted to bring up. Visibility is such this key word throughout the entire industry, whether it's on the technology, whether it's on the broker side. And everybody talks about visibility as just far as that, like, hey, where's your truck? Where's your load? Everything like that. But one of the things that we've been doing or looking into is, more importantly, what about the visibility on getting towards that, like, those decisions, the more of, how in manufacturing you're moving towards lean manufacturing. where's the visibility there that's going to bring it towards lean distribution or lean transportation?
Yeah.
Because sure, yeah, all right, it's late, whatever, big deal. I know where it is. More looking back at it, where are we spending those dollars and why are we spending them that way is one thing that I think within, because like you're saying, on the automation, sure, it's there. On a few of these, you want to know the exceptions or the, hey, there's a fire I got to put out somewhere, but where from the grand scheme of things are we making these decisions? What are you seeing within that not only, from day to day, it's really easy to get lost and I just got to move this load.
Yeah.
But as you look back at it from a quarter to a year, how do you look at it, or how does the industry look at it? Is what kind of visibility are we trying to get from that? What kind of decisions can be made better?
So this might be controversial to say, but I don't think it's ever
From you, Chris. Controversial?
I know, right?
No.
I don't think it's ever as volatile as people want to proclaim.
Okay.
I think that what's volatile is your emotion in the moment of not wanting to lose money.
Amen to that.
I think that's the biggest driving force behind a lot of things. Or you misquoted a load and you don't want to take that L, so you give the load back. You make up some BS excuse about how a truck broke down, or they blew a tire, or they're not, or whatever.
Yeah.
I personally think 95% of the problems that brokers have are self-inflicted. I truly do, and I think that the markets, even through COVID, the market operated identically, dang near identically as it has over the last 10 years, 18-month cycle. The only thing that was volatile was the extreme that the rates went up. That was the only thing that was different. That
is controversial, Chris.
I know it is. I know it is, because here's the thing. 2019 was not the best freight market, right?
Okay.
Overall.
Right,
2020, things bottomed out, right? But after everything started opening back up, the market went up, right? If you look at that, you could argue, September to November of 2020 is when rates started really starting to shoot up. Mm-hmm. They held firm all of 21, and beginning phase, I would say it held on to about May of 2022. So what does that equal? 18 to 20 some months?
Yeah.
If you look back at any freight market, it's anywhere from 18 to 24 months is how long it lasts. The only volatility of it was the rates shot through the roof. That's where the biggest thing lied. And that's because it blew analysts, budgets, everybody's out the door, because it was like, oh my gosh, when there is pandemonium, people acted the way that people do, right? You want me to do that? $8 a mile. Shipper's like, I got to have this on the shelves. All right, pay it. And then it just kept going and kept going and kept going. And then about May, June of 2022, all of a sudden, there's not a backup at the port anymore. Nope. Customers are realizing that, oh, wow, we panic bought, our inventory's sky high. We're not going to send out a 10 pallet full truckload anymore. We're going to go back to LTL, or we're going to partial that. And things started to calm down. And the thing is most people rode that high, right? When it's easy, man, everyone can sell, right? Anyone can sell when the market's like that. But the fact of the matter is it operated the way that it always does. The only outlier was how high prices were for equipment and everything else, and how high the rates shot up. But the market performed the way that the market always performs.
I like your perspective on that, and I expect nothing less as far as controversial, and then backed up with some good data there. I like that.
Yeah.
So as you were saying, and you're talking about, you're not moving in a truck anymore. Maybe you are moving an LTL or looking at parcel. I mean, how, within that kind of the different modes you're going through within like multi-mode management, what do you see with that? Is that something where, there's still times where it's going to be, because within our process here, that's something that we've we've taken a big swing at, and that we do because ideally, and one day, we want to look at load management, where there's some automation and going, hey, how should you be moving this,
Yeah.
versus just going, hey, let me look at it at truckload. Nah, that's a little too much. We'll look at it at partial. But then in reality, there might have been, you move half of it in LTL and a little bit of it in parcel, and that might be the smartest, fastest way. So as far as now that we've got, capacities out there, and we have what, on any given day, 3 modes, 4 if depending on how you break it up. How do you define how you send things out? How do you, from a brokerage standpoint, look at it, or as the freight coach? How do you think about these different modes from get to point A to point B?
I think as a broker, you need to look at what is the most beneficial to your customer, not what's the most beneficial to your P&L. People base decisions based off of how much money they can make in a lot of situations, right? And I'll use a prime example here. This literally just happened to me last week. I had a customer come to me, rush order, very tight transit, very much like I had to tell the customer, like, hey, this is a perfect world scenario. This is no traffic. This is no delays. This is nothing. All right. Like, it can be done. I just need to let you know, though, that that's a lot of driving and not a lot of time, and they can't hit traffic.
And the Red Sea has to part, and the sun has to hit on that truck the entire time.
Without a doubt.
But if those things happen, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I quoted him out and everything, and he calls me back 20 minutes later. Hey, just for how hot this shipment is, we're actually going to send one of our own employees down. And then we're going to, from Virginia, and we're going to send the guy up from Florida who works for us, and they're just going to meet in the middle and swap out. This is what we want to do in this situation. All right, cool, man. No harm, no foul, right? Yeah. Fast forward 3 hours. It's 9:30 Eastern time, and I get a phone call from my customer. And hey, is your driver available still? Let me go check it out. Yeah, give me a minute. Call him. Driver's like, yeah, absolutely. I need to get home. Like, please. What time do you need me? And then they're like, are we sure this is a thing now? I'm like, yes, it's a thing. Customer wouldn't be calling me at this time right now if it wasn't. He's like, cool. That's right. I will be there at 7 a.m. I'm like, perfect. So I call my customer back, let him know, yeah, my driver can be there at 7 a.m. He's like, all right, what's your price? I said, the exact same price I quoted you 3 hours ago. And the customer's like, wait, really? I'm like, yeah, the driver didn't get more expensive. Nothing changed. And it's in those moments where some people would take that and be like, yeah, man, it's going to be $800 more now. Like, if you they play to the situation, right?
I was just say, did you have one of those moments where you're like, dang, I knew I should ask for more? No. Or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, I didn't.
That was way too easy. Yeah.
I didn't at all, because, again, man, this is how I feed my family. I don't roll the dice with that stuff.
Right.
Because I look at it from a long-term perspective here, man, where it's like, what if that customer came to my competition with another opportunity because he didn't want to put all their eggs in one basket? Mm-hmm. I upcharge, my competition doesn't.
You lose it. You get all of nothing.
They're gonna let it go on this one. But if there's 4 rush order shipments that come available the next day, guess what? I'm not seeing 4 rush order shipments the next day.
You lose that confidence. Yeah.
And to tie that into your initial question about the equipment and everything else and the commodity shipping, it's providing that solution to your customer no matter what. What is the most effective and valuable option for your customer? Because if you're focused on how much you can make in that situation, because again, people play into the volatility of stuff all the time. And when I say people, you guys, I'm using myself as an example early on in my career. All right. Because I've actually done this job for a very long time.
I was just saying, it's probably just like any sales job. That's how you're taught to do it initially. You're coming out, you're all Wall Street and boiler room, and you're going, yeah, all right. It's, I don't know who the guy is on the end of this phone. Let's just get it done fast and for as much money as possible. And then you learn, you grow, and you realize, oh, I need long-term partnerships.
And it's exactly how you handle it with equipment types. You don't try and oversell anything and being like, oh, well, because like I say that with equipment types because I work in open deck and heavy haul, right? Like that's my wheelhouse, man. And there are certain things where, dude, I could easily upcharge in certain situations, and people aren't going to bat an eye at it. But I believe in karma, man. I believe in the universe. I believe in doing the right thing now. Fortunately, again, I've had a lot of stuff happen to me where it's like, no, I don't need to do that. Like this is actually how we can ship it. This is actually more cost effective to you. And again, I'll use another real world example. Brand new customer that I just onboarded a couple months, like earlier this year, last month.
Do you send them orange shirts once they've
Not yet, but I
as
will.
part of the package?
It'll come. I got to earn the right to send them orange shirts, but I will. But you know, same thing. Like I quoted him out, flatbed load. He then calls me back after he awards me the load, and the load picks up. He's like, I got to ask. He's like, did you give me a sweetheart entry level? Like, we'll just break even on this rate on this one.
Yeah, get them hooked in cheap, and then you know what are they gonna do later, right?
Yeah, I'm like, no, not at all. That's the rate. He's like, because this was a flatbed load. He's like, just so you're aware, you were $400 under what we've been paying dry vans on this lane. And that right there, again, selling the mode, selling the volatility of it all. That's why it's like, I know if I apply and stay with these principles, the long-term I'll win. I will have customer loyalty that goes very deep with that, because on those loads that can go on a step deck, I'm going to ship them on a step deck. I'm not going to push them to ship it on an RGN to upcharge. Why would I do that? Why would I do that? Who wins there? Me, short term. And it's going to come back eventually. You'll never get punished for doing the right thing, man.
You are speaking my language, my friend. I love it. No, I love everything you had to say here. I'm going to cut it down here, give you a chance. I want you to where do I find the Freight Coach other than just search orange shirt into Google?
Orange shirt gang.
Yeah, that's right. I know you've had a chance to drop some of your advertisers. Now let's drop some plugs for you yourself here.
Yeah, you can iTunes, Spotify, Coffee with the Freight Coach. You can just put the Freight Coach in on YouTube. If you guys go to those platforms, do me a solid, subscribe and share, rank that show out there. And then if you just search the Freight Coach on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, it'll go right, and TikTok too. I post stuff on TikTok as well.
So we'll see you dancing shortly.
No. I just post my clips out there. I don't think anybody people. I want to keep growing. I don't want to get like kicked to the curb. If people saw me dancing, that's not going to happen.
No, I really appreciate you taking the time and speaking with me, Chris. Like I said, I love watching your stuff. I do it on LinkedIn just because it looks like I'm working if you don't look too closely. But yeah, now that I've said that, everybody knows that's what I do at my desk all day. No, but no, Chris, great to hear from you here. Love having the conversation, and I really like the message you put out. You may call it, controversial at times. I think, as we've talked about, it is real, and most importantly for me, it's about doing things right because it needs to be done right for both you and your partner. And I think that as Banyan-y as I'll get here, that's something that we always look to do, and something that from any sales perspective that I've ever been in that I do now is when you shake someone's hand, you got to know it goes both ways, because you're the person there and they trust you, so it's worth giving it back to them. But I'll end with Go Guardians. The Twins ain't got nothing. No. We'll have to give you. We'll have to get a cell phone number so that way we can give each other some real hate back and forth as we. With the pitch count, they might actually be short games. Who knows? Yeah, exactly. But we'll be out in July as we are every year. So. Well, here's to you being in till the end, so it's a fun rivalry, because if it's not hard enough to break your heart, then it's not close enough to be a rivalry. Yeah, it's very true. That's right. No, Chris, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. If you ever need another bald guy to blind people on yours with the glare, you know who to call. Yeah, absolutely. We'll do it. Hey, thanks, Chris. You have a great one, man. You too.